Nimrod is a compelling figure found in both the Bible and various ancient texts. His story is echoed through religious, historical, and even mythological traditions, portraying him as a mighty ruler, city builder, and above all, a symbol of rebellion against God. Although his biblical narrative is relatively brief, the implications of his actions and character have left a lasting impact on theology and history. Nimrod in the Bible, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The Bible introduces Nimrod in Genesis 10:8, 10, where he is described as the son of Cush, a descendant of Noah's son Ham. The passage states, Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. This brief but informative description tells us several things. Nimrod was the first to attain great power on earth after the flood. He distinguished himself through his prowess in hunting, not just animals, but perhaps metaphorically, people as well, conquering and subjugating them. He was a founder of some of the earliest cities of civilization, including Babel, Babylon, Uruk, Erech, and Akkad, centers of culture, trade, and idol worship in ancient Mesopotamia. While the passage notes that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, many scholars interpret this phrase not as approval but as an ominous sign of defiance. Nimrod stood in the face of or in opposition to the Lord, signifies rebellion against divine authority. The Tower of Babel, man's ambition versus God's sovereignty. One of the most notable episodes associated with Nimrod is the building of the Tower of Babel, recorded in Genesis 11:1-9. While the Bible does not explicitly say Nimrod built the tower, tradition strongly links him to the effort due to his association with Babel and his ambitious nature. The people of the earth, still united by one language, decided to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Their goal was clear. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. This was a direct contradiction to God's command to fill the earth after the flood. This massive project was not merely architectural. It symbolized humanity's collective pride and desire to ascend to divine heights. God responded by confusing their language and scattering them across the earth. The tower was never completed, and the city became known as Babel, meaning confusion. This divine intervention halted the first organized human rebellion against God's authority, a rebellion likely orchestrated by Nimrod himself. Nimrod and the Antichrist, a prototype of rebellion. Throughout Christian theology, Nimrod is often seen as a prototype of the Antichrist. Just as the Antichrist in Revelation is prophesied to unite humanity in defiance of God during the end times, Nimrod did something similar in the beginning. His efforts to centralize power, enforce uniformity, and elevate human achievement above God's will echo characteristics later associated with ultimate evil. Nimrod's empire was rooted in idolatry and occult practices. The establishment of Babylon and other cities became the foundation of pagan religion. These cities were not just political centers, but hubs for the worship of false gods and the practice of dark spiritual arts. Nimrod's legacy, therefore, includes the spiritual corruption that would later plague the entire ancient world. Nimrod in ancient writings, Gilgamesh and the Sumerian king's list. While the Bible provides the foundation of Nimrod's story, additional insight is gained through extra-biblical texts such as the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Sumerian king's list. Many scholars believe Nimrod and Gilgamesh may represent the same historical figure or at least share characteristics of a common archetype. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the title character is a powerful king who seeks immortality and challenges the gods. He is portrayed as a semi-divine figure who rules with unmatched strength. The parallel to Nimrod is strong. Both are mighty hunters, builders of cities and challengers of divine authority. The Sumerian king's list, which catalogs rulers before and after the Great Flood, names early monarchs whose reigns seem to reflect similar timelines and traits. These connections affirm that Nimrod was not merely mythological, but a real figure embedded in the fabric of ancient Mesopotamian civilization. Occult practices and idolatry, defying God in spirit. Nimrod's rebellion wasn't limited to governance or warfare. It extended into the spiritual realm. Archaeological discoveries suggest that rulers like Nimrod claimed spiritual power and divine favor, often practicing sorcery, astrology, and necromancy, practices strictly forbidden in the Bible. Deuteronomy 18 verses 10. The 12 strongly warns against these activities. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Such practices were reportedly central to Nimrod's empire. His rebellion was not only physical and political, but spiritual, an all-out rejection of the worship of the one true God in favor of man-made idols and occult rituals. Nimrod and Abraham, a clash of worldviews. Jewish tradition provides an intriguing story about the confrontation between Nimrod and Abraham. According to these writings, Nimrod learned of a prophecy foretelling the birth of a child who would destroy idolatry, Abraham. Attempting to kill him, Nimrod ordered the execution of all newborns. Abraham survived and grew up to challenge the idolatry of his time. In a famous confrontation, Abraham destroyed his father's idols and declared the futility of worshiping lifeless statues. Nimrod responded by ordering Abraham to be burned alive. However, God miraculously protected Abraham in the fire, much like he would later protect Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This confrontation further emphasizes Nimrod's role as a villain who opposed God's chosen messengers. The downfall of Nimrod. Despite his immense power and accomplishments, Nimrod's empire did not last. The failure of the Tower of Babel marked the beginning of his decline. As God scattered the people, the foundation of his centralized kingdom crumbled. Babylon would rise again later under new rulers, but the memory of Nimrod persisted as a cautionary tale. According to some ancient sources, Nimrod was later killed, some say by Esau, the grandson of Abraham, signifying that God's promise to protect Abraham's line and defeat its enemies would ultimately prevail. Legacy and lessons. Nimrod's story is not just a tale of ancient rebellion. It is a mirror that reflects the consequences of pride, disobedience, and spiritual corruption. He reminds us that no matter how powerful a person becomes, defying God leads to destruction. His legacy endures in the symbolism of Babel, in the warnings of the prophets, and in the shadows cast by future tyrants who follow in his path. Conclusion. Nimrod's life represents one of the earliest and most dramatic examples of humanity's defiance against God. From the construction of cities and towers to his embrace of idolatry and occultism, Nimrod built a legacy of rebellion. Yet, his story also highlights God's sovereignty and justice. Through divine intervention, his kingdom was scattered and his ambitions were brought low. As we study Nimrod, we're reminded of the importance of humility, obedience, and faith. His story urges us to avoid the same path of pride and rebellion, and instead, to trust in the one true God who alone holds the ultimate authority over heaven and earth.